Strange Brigade. So this is an upcoming cooperative third-person shooting game by Rebellion, the same developers most known for the Sniper Elite series. So the game has a pretty simple plot, and how deep that plot will be explored is not clear, because the emphasis to me of this game will be simply on its cooperative gameplay and not necessarily the story. So, I mean, the premise is 4,000 years ago in Africa, there was a evil queen by the name of Satire, and she was overthrown by her people and sealed in a tomb. And in the 1930s, which is when the game takes place, an archaeologist discovers her tomb and accidentally releases her spirit. Obviously not the most original storyline, but as I said, that doesn't even seem to be the game's focus. But the game's narrative and its style tries to capture the style of how media and movies were presented in the early 1900s. And the Strange Brigade are a group of unique and oddly brought together secret agents sent to eliminate the threat of Satire and fight mythological enemies and solve puzzles. So before we get more into the gameplay, now that I've told you about the story, this is running on PS4. That's what I got the review code for. So obviously most of the things involving performance and visuals is not relevant to PC because, you know, obviously PC is an unbounded machine, so it obviously will depend on what type of rig you have. But on the PS4 settings, and I assume it's going to be on Xbox too, I noticed that there was an unlocked frame rate setting in the display settings. And from what I saw, when you check unlock frame rate, the game seems to run between maybe 30 and 45 frames. Unchecked, I would assume it's locked at 30. And in some areas of the game, because there's a lot of enemies on screen at some parts, and some areas seem to be very demanding, I did notice drops below 30 and some stuttering. But the game does release in a week, and usually these games do get day one patches. Also, there's a career stat option for you to take a look at those, as well as leaderboards, and 3 modes so far in the game: campaign, horde mode, and score attack, and all of those are self-explanatory. So, a little bit more about the gameplay. The game is not class-based, as I originally thought it was. You can choose from 4 different characters in the Strange Brigade, and they're customizable as far as the weapons, tools, and abilities you can outfit them with, but each character pretty much has access to all tools, weapons, and abilities. None of them are limited to which character you choose. So weapons, you can choose your initial weapons at the starting screen, but you can also upgrade those weapons and switch those weapons at workbenches placed throughout the level. There are also different types of traps that are placed around the level that can be activated to kill enemies, because there will be a lot of waves and, like I said, a high level of enemies coming at you. And by the way, I played this game co-op with one other person, Jack Johnny. Shout out to Jack Johnny. So I assume the difficulty of this game scales based on how many people are actually playing it. I assume it wouldn't be the same amount of enemies, or at least the same amount of difficulty if you're playing with 2 players versus 4. Some of the traps in the game are like spinning blades, log traps, and I found them pretty cool and useful. Your amulet power is a special move that can be activated by killing enemies and collecting their souls. There are special weapons that can be purchased throughout the level by spending gold coins. Gold coins are obtained by killing enemies, opening treasure chests, breaking objects, and solving puzzles as well. By the way, doing some research about this game, I found out, you could guess it anyway, that this game was inspired by one of the most popular co-op games ever, Left 4 Dead. So that's kind of the direction that they were going in. So they took a little bit of inspiration from Left 4 Dead and combined it with a few previous games that Rebellion has made themselves. Due to the embargo, I am limited to only showing you the first level of the game, which is pretty extensive. It took us about 40 minutes to an hour to complete the first level. We ran into several different enemy types, and if the first level is anything, if the rest of the levels are anything like the first level, pretty much what it will be is you come across different enemy types, and then at the end of the level, you'll get into a few puzzles by then, and face a final boss. You have a primary weapon, secondary weapon, some type of grenade, the amulet like I said. There are ammo refills throughout the levels, workbenches as I mentioned, and health potions for you to regenerate your health. So let's briefly talk about the presentation and the visuals. So the visuals in this game are serviceable. It's obviously nothing groundbreaking. There is I would say it's a pretty clean presentation, with anti-aliasing clearly working pretty well, I would say. And there's a surprising lack of strong motion blur. I just always assume, as soon as I see games like this, I always think the motion blur is going to be pretty strong, which I obviously hate. And there's no option to turn off motion blur in a lot of console games. But I didn't notice any really strong motion blur, so I was pleased about that. There's good lighting, decent character detail and world detail. The animations do seem kind of stiff and could use some work. Now with Rebellion's games, this has been a complaint and a problem people have stated for a while with their games, is the engine does seem to be in need of an upgrade, which is why if you look at the movement in this game, it does seem to be pretty similar to how the movement is in the Sniper Elite games. So that does seem to be a well-needed upgrade. I'm not sure what the name of the engine that Rebellion uses. I believe it's something like the Asura engine, and it might be a proprietary engine that they use. Now, the latest reported resolution as far as the console goes is on the PS4 Pro. This game will run at about 1440p, and on the Xbox One, Xbox One X, excuse me, I believe the targeted resolution is 1800p. And that was pretty clear to me as soon as I booted up the game and started running it. It was clear that it was above 1080p, but I thought it might have been some type of obscure, uncommon resolution, something above 1080p, but I wasn't completely sure because it is a decently sized and detailed level design, and the reports of those resolutions that I just stated came about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, but it's likely that they actually stuck to those resolutions for each of the consoles respectively. So that's pretty much all the information that I have about this game.